The first thing I saw was the banner. It stretched across the shoreline between two brand-new cedar posts, snapping in the morning wind like it had been there for years. Lake Hollow Marina, grand opening weekend. Under it, 40 boat slips floated on the surface of my lake. Not one dock, not one little fishing platform, a full marina. Fresh lumber, metal cleats, electrical pedestals, numbered slip signs, blue and white bumpers, kayak racks, security cameras, a floating office shack, a keypad gate, and even a polished sign that said members only. For a few seconds, I just sat in my truck and stared through the windshield, because the lake was mine, the shoreline was mine, the access road was mine. The lake bed was recorded inside my family's parcel, in black ink, at the county recorder's office, long before Lake Hollow Estates ever existed. But that Saturday morning, the HOA had turned it into a business. There were residents walking the docks with coffee cups and brochures, a man in boat shoes taking pictures of Slip 18 like he had already imagined his pontoon tied there, a woman scanning a QR code at a folding check-in table, and two teenagers dragging kayaks down a gravel path that had been cut straight through the shoreline grass I had spent years protecting. And at the center of it all stood Karen Blevins, president of the Lake Hollow Estates HOA, wearing a white blazer over a navy Marina polo, smiling like she had just opened a country club. I stepped out of my truck and walked toward the water. A man near the table turned to me and asked if I was with Marina staff. I told him no, I own the lake. He laughed, because he thought I was joking, but Karen did not laugh. Her face tightened for half a second before the smile came back. "Good morning," she said loudly, making sure the residents heard her. "We're in the middle of a private HOA event." I pointed to the floating docks and told her she built a marina on my private lake. Karen folded her hands over her clipboard and replied, "Lake Hollow has always been a shared recreational water feature." "No," I said. "It has always been a lake you can see from your houses." Her smile got sharper. "The community has invested $4 million into this marina. Boat slip memberships have already been assigned, and you cannot interfere with residents' purchased rights." Purchased rights. That was the phrase that made every resident near us turn. I looked around and finally saw the rest of it. A sign that said 40 annual boat slips sold, another that read $7,500 slip membership, and another saying kayak racks $1,200 per season. A locked fuel storage cabinet sat near the waterline. Electrical cables ran across the dock. A reserved tag hung on almost every slip, and my private lake sign had been pulled from the old post, leaning against a trash bin like junk. I took out my phone, and Karen's voice dropped. "If you disrupt this opening, the HOA will pursue damages." I started recording anyway. The banner, the slip numbers, the payment signs, the removed private sign, the electrical hookups, the fuel cabinet, the residents holding membership forms, and Karen telling people the lake was a community amenity. Then I called the sheriff, then the county, and then my attorney. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, the grand opening was over. County inspectors had red-tagged every dock, every electrical hookup, every fuel cabinet, and every marina sign, while the sheriff had cleared residents off the access road. By the end of the month, 40 boat slip memberships were voided. Lake Hollow had to refund every payment. Karen was removed from office, and the $4 million marina they built on my lake was sitting behind caution tape under a county notice that said, "No valid permit, private property, marina operation prohibited." My lake was never meant to be busy, that was the whole point of it. It sat in a shallow bowl of land behind a line of old pines, fed by 2 creeks and a spring that ran cold even in August. In the mornings, fog lifted off the water in layers. In the evenings, deer came down near the eastern bank, turtles lined the half-sunk log by the cove, and herons hunted along the reeds like they owned the place more honestly than anyone with paperwork ever could. My grandfather bought the land before the lake had a name, back when it was more of a flood basin than a lake, a low, wet place that held water after storms and dried around the edges in summer. My grandfather worked with a county engineer, built a small drainage control structure, reinforced the lower bank, and turned it into a real private lake. Not a resort lake, not a speedboat lake, but a quiet fishing lake. My father grew up there, and so did I. My mother had a favorite chair on the old dock, the kind with peeling green paint and a cup holder that never held a cup straight, where she would sit with a book, while my father and I pretended we were fishing for bass instead of hiding from chores. My grandfather kept a rowboat tied to the stump near the cove, and when he died, my father scattered some of his ashes under the pines because he said the old man would have hated anything too formal. I did not inherit money, I inherited responsibility. The lake bed, the shoreline, the access road, the old fishing cabin, the drainage structure, and the surrounding parcel all came through my family. The deed described the water body and lake bed. The survey showed the shoreline boundaries. The tax records identified the lake as part of my parcel. The county environmental file listed my family as responsible for the drainage control structure and shoreline maintenance, and the old permits were in our name. That mattered, because owning a lake is not just about telling people no. It means liability, erosion, wildlife, flood control, water quality, insurance, fallen trees, and drainage complaints after storms. The kind of responsibility nobody wants until they see an opportunity to monetize the view. When Lake Hollow Estates was built along the West Ridge, the developer knew exactly what the deal was. They bought land near the lake, not the lake. Their lots had lake views. Some had walking paths inside their own plat that looked toward the water. Their clubhouse patio faced the sunset over my cove, and their marketing brochure used words like lakeside living, water-inspired community, and resort-style atmosphere. But the recorded documents did not give them a dock. They did not get lakebed rights. They did not get boating rights. They did not get fishing rights. They did not get shoreline access. And they did not get a marina. My father made sure of that before the first house sold. He had seen what happened when developers sold atmosphere and buyers assumed ownership. So he demanded a recorded clarification letter, and he made the developer remove language implying private lake access. The final plat showed the HOA boundary stopping short of my shoreline. Their covenants controlled their lots, their clubhouse, and their common areas, not my lake. For years, that was enough. Residents looked at the water, some complained they could not use it, some asked politely, and a few trespassed, which I handled with signs, cameras, and letters. Most people understood after one conversation. Then Karen Blevins became president of the Lake Hollow Estates, HOA. Karen had a way of speaking that made theft sound like strategic improvement. She did not say she wanted to take the lake. She said the HOA needed to activate underutilized community-facing assets. She did not say she wanted to sell access. She said residents deserve to enjoy the full recreational identity of the neighborhood. She did not say my father's documents were inconvenient. She said historical paperwork should not prevent modern amenities. She started with emails. Would I consider a seasonal fishing agreement? No. Would I consider limited kayak access? No. Would I lease shoreline for a community dock? No. Would I attend a board meeting to discuss a public-private partnership? No. Each time, I answered in writing. The lake was private. No access was granted. No dock use. No boating. No events. No memberships. No construction. And no shoreline disturbance. I thought written refusal would end it, but that was my mistake. Some people hear no as a boundary, but Karen heard it as a delay. And if you have ever owned land, water, a road, a dock, a pasture, or even a driveway near an HOA that keeps calling your property a community feature, keep listening. Like, comment, and subscribe when you get the chance, because this story is exactly why deeds, county maps, permits, emails, and camera footage matter. An HOA can print brochures, sell memberships, and spend millions. But if the records say the lake is private, every dollar they spend becomes evidence. The first orange flag appeared in March, stuck near the western shoreline, just below the slope where Lake Hollow's walking path curved behind their clubhouse. At first I thought it belonged to a utility locator, but then I found 3 more flags near the reeds and a strip of pink survey tape tied to a branch inside my property line. I pulled the camera footage. A contractor truck had come through the HOA side 2 days earlier, and 2 men walked down with measuring wheels, took pictures of my shoreline, then marked the ground before leaving. I emailed the HOA manager that afternoon. Contractors entered private lake property on March 12th without permission. Remove any flags, identify the contractor, and confirm no work is planned on or near my shoreline. 3 days later, Karen replied, Lake Hollow is evaluating recreational improvements within the community lake environment. Your concerns are noted. 3 days later, Lake Hollow. Community lake environment. I read that phrase out loud just to hear how ridiculous it sounded. I replied with the deed reference, survey, and a clear warning. Lake Hollow, HOA, has no rights to enter, improve, alter, build on, access, use, or market any portion of the lake, lakebed, shoreline, or private access road. No permission is granted. No response. In April, gravel appeared near the HOA fence line, followed by stacked lumber, and then a small excavator. I called the management company twice, and they said they would check. I sent certified letters. I copied my attorney, Marissa Cole, and I posted larger signs that read, "Private lake no HOA, access no construction, no boating." One sign disappeared within a week. My gate camera caught a golf cart stopping near it at night, but the angle was too poor to identify who removed it. I replaced the sign and added another camera. Then the newsletter leaked. A Lake Hollow resident I knew forwarded it to me. President's update. Marina project moves forward. The article said the board had approved a transformational waterfront investment that would create 40 annual boat slips, kayak storage, security lighting, lakeside access, and a premium membership program, noting that reservations would open soon. The artist rendering showed my lake, my shoreline, my cove, and my pine trees. At the bottom, in Karen's words, was the sentence that told me she knew exactly what she was doing. Legal access discussions remain ongoing, but the board believes momentum is essential to protect resident expectations and construction pricing. Momentum that was not ownership, that was pressure. Marissa sent a cease and desist letter the next day. Stop all construction, stop all marketing, preserve records, provide permits, and provide any document showing ownership, easement, lease, license, or access rights. Remove all materials from my client's property. The HOA attorney responded 2 weeks later with a fog bank. Lake Hollow Estates has long understood the lake to be an integral recreational feature of the community. The association denies unauthorized activity and reserves its rights. They did not provide a deed, they did not provide an easement, and they did not provide a permit, but construction continued. By June, floating dock sections were visible from across the water. I found shoreline grass scraped away. A temporary ramp had been cut into the bank. Electrical conduit lay in a trench. A fuel cabinet appeared behind the construction fence, and contractors installed posts for a security gate on my private access road, not theirs. I called the county, but the building department could not find a marina permit. The shoreline office could not find a grading permit. The environmental office could not find a stormwater review. The fire marshal had no fuel storage approval, and the electrical inspector had no permit for dock power. Every office told me to file written complaints, which I did, but the problem was timing government moves carefully, while contractors move fast when someone is writing checks. Then Karen announced the grand opening, Lake Hollow Marina, grand opening weekend, slip holder preview, annual memberships assigned, 40 slips, $7,500 per slip, $1,200 for kayak racks, $500 for key fobs. Non-refundable reservation deposits applied toward membership, and residents were told the marina was a completed HOA improvement. On Saturday morning, I drove out expecting to find maybe a ribbon-cutting setup. Instead, I found a $4 million illegal marina floating on my lake. The hardest thing I did that morning was nothing. Not truly nothing, but nothing physical. I did not cut ropes. I did not pull boards apart. I did not push residents off the dock. I did not block cars with my truck, and I did not grab Karen's clipboard and throw it in the lake, even though I imagined it with more satisfaction than I should admit. I recorded because the camera catches what anger ruins. I walked slowly from the access road to the shoreline, narrating the date, time, location, and what I was seeing. 40 numbered boat slips, electrical pedestals, dock lighting, kayak racks, a fuel storage cabinet, a membership table, a QR payment sign, residents carrying forms, contractors in marina shirts, my private lake sign removed from its post, shoreline grading, a new gravel path, a security gate, a keypad, and absolutely no county permit posted. Karen followed me at a distance, telling people I was an unhappy neighboring landowner. That phrase was almost funny neighboring, so I recorded that too. A resident near Slip 12 asked Karen whether his membership was safe, and she said yes, so I recorded that. A woman asked if the lake ownership issue had been resolved, and Karen confidently stated the HOA's rights had been fully reviewed, so I recorded that. A man asked whether he could bring his pontoon next weekend, and Karen told him that is what he paid for, so I recorded that too. Then I photographed every sign: $7,500 annual slip membership, reserved slip holders only, members gate, kayak storage, fuel safety station, marina office, and Lake Hollow marina rules. I took close-up photos of the dock numbers, the electrical hookups, the fuel cabinet label, the access keypad, and the exposed conduit running toward the water. I photographed disturbed shoreline vegetation, erosion at the ramp, and the old post where my private sign had been removed. Then I called the sheriff's office and reported unauthorized commercial activity, trespass, and a possible confrontation on private property. I called the county building department's emergency inspection line, the shoreline environmental office, the fire marshal, and finally, my attorney. Marissa answered on the second ring. When I told her the marina was open, she said one word I had never heard from her before. Today? Yes. With people on it? Yes. With slips sold? Yes. She exhaled and warned me. Do not let them bait you. I'm on my way. While we waited, residents kept arriving, and that was the part that made my stomach turn. Many of them were not trying to steal anything they believed the HOA. They had receipts, welcome packets, and assigned slip numbers. Some brought life jackets and coolers, and one older couple arrived with a framed photo of the boat they planned to buy. Karen had sold them Confidence, the kind with a logo on top. I asked one man if he would share his membership form. He hesitated until I told him I owned the lake and there were no permits. He looked at Karen, then he emailed it to me, and that form became key evidence. It said the HOA reserved slip 23 to him for an annual fee. It promised access through the marina gate, use of common dock utilities, and seasonal lake recreation privileges, explicitly describing the lake as a community-controlled amenity. Community-controlled, I sent it to Marissa immediately. By the time the sheriff deputy arrived, my folder and phone had become a portable evidence room. The deed, the survey, the county parcel map, the lakebed ownership record, the drainage file, the shoreline permit history, the no easement title search, the cease and desist letter, the HOA newsletter, the marina membership form, the resident receipt, the photos, the video, and Karen's statements. The deputy listened to Karen first because she reached him first. She said a neighboring landowner was disrupting an HOA marina opening. I handed him the deed and said, "This is not neighboring land, this is my lake." He read the parcel map, looked at the dock, then at Karen, and then back at the map. That was when the first county inspector arrived. County records are not dramatic when you read them alone. They are dry, boring, and filed in offices that smell like toner and old carpet. They do not shout, they do not point, and they do not wear reflective vests or stand behind grand opening tables. But when someone builds a $4 million marina on land they do not own, county records become a hammer. The building inspector's name was Paul Reardon. He arrived with a tablet, a safety vest, and the calm look of someone who expected a permit issue and found a legal disaster. He asked Karen for the marina permit. She handed him a contractor packet. He asked again, and she said the contractor handled permitting. He searched the address. No marina permit, no dock construction permit, no structural review, and no public occupancy approval. Then the shoreline environmental officer arrived. She asked for the grading permit, stormwater plan, shoreline disturbance approval, and environmental review. Karen said the work was an HOA improvement. The officer said, "That is not a permit category. No grading permit, no shoreline disturbance approval, no stormwater review, and no erosion control plan." Then the electrical inspector arrived and looked at the dock pedestals. No electrical permit, no inspection, and no approval for dockside power. Then the fire marshal's office sent a deputy marshal to inspect the fuel cabinet, no fuel storage approval, no fire review, and no spill plan. Every agency asked for paperwork. Karen had brochures. I had records. Marissa arrived while the inspectors were still on the dock. She handed them certified copies. My deed, the lakebed parcel record, the survey overlay, the title search showing no easement, no lease, no license, no public dedication, and 0 HOA rights. The building inspector looked at the survey overlay and asked, "The dock is anchored over his lakebed?" Marissa said, "Yes." The shoreline officer asked, And the grading is on his shoreline? Yes. The deputy looked at Karen and asked if the HOA had permission from the owner. Karen said the lake had been presented historically as part of Lake Hollow's recreational identity. Marissa immediately countered, "Identity is not permission." Karen said residents had purchased memberships in good faith. Marissa replied, "From someone who did not own what they sold." That line spread through the crowd like a cold wind. Residents started asking questions. Who owns the lake? Are our slips legal? Can we use the docks? Will we get refunds? Did the HOA know? Karen tried to calm them, saying legal issues were being resolved, that the HOA had invested $4 million, that the association had relied on long-standing community expectations, and that shutting down the marina would harm every homeowner. The county inspector said, "The marina is not approved for use." Karen turned on him. "Do you understand how much money has been spent here?" He looked at the floating docks and replied, "Spending money does not create a permit." Marissa added, "Or ownership." That was the legal reversal in one sentence. The HOA had confused investment with rights. They believed that if they built fast enough, sold enough slips, collected enough money, and got enough residents emotionally attached, the problem would become too expensive to undo. But the county did not care how much the marina cost. The deed did not care, the permit database did not care, and the lakebed record did not care. The inspector printed the first red tag from his truck. "Stop work, no valid, permit, no occupancy, marina operation prohibited." Then he printed another, and another. The shoreline officer issued a notice requiring review and restoration planning. The electrical inspector tagged the dock power, and the deputy fire marshal tagged the fuel cabinet. The sheriff deputy told Karen the residents needed to leave the dock and access road until the ownership and permit issues were resolved. Karen argued, "You can't clear HOA members from an HOA facility." The deputy looked at the red tags, then at my deed and said, "This is not an HOA facility." That was when the grand opening ended. It took nearly an hour to clear everyone safely. Nobody wanted panic on floating docks with electrical lines under review and angry residents holding expensive membership packets. The sheriff deputy asked people to walk off one group at a time, while county inspectors photographed everything as they left. Residents stood near the parking area, calling spouses, taking pictures, and demanding answers from board members who suddenly had urgent phone calls. Karen stayed near the check-in table, still trying to control the story. She told residents the closure was temporary. Marissa told them the lake was private. Karen told them the HOA would fight. The building inspector told them no marina operation could continue without permits and property rights. Karen told them not to speak to me, but several did anyway. By the end of the day, I had copies of 11 membership receipts, 6 reservation emails, 2 key fob invoices, 1 contractor welcome letter, and a screenshot of the payment portal. Residents had paid thousands of dollars for access to a lake the HOA did not own. The county posted notices at the dock gate. No valid permit, no occupancy, no marina operation, shoreline review required, private property dispute. The sheriff issued trespass warnings to the HOA representatives and contractors for my access road and shoreline. They were allowed to retrieve personal tools later under supervision, but they could not continue work or bring residents back. Then came the emergency HOA meeting. It happened 4 nights later in the Lake Hollow clubhouse, under a framed rendering of the marina that now looked like evidence. The room was packed. People stood along the walls. Some had paid for slips, some had paid for kayak racks, and some had not paid but knew their dues had funded the project. Everyone wanted to know whether the HOA had just spent $4 million on a marina it could not use. Karen sat at the front with the board and the homeowners association attorney. Marissa and I sat near the aisle. The attorney opened by saying there were unresolved questions regarding lake access rights. A resident shouted, "I paid $7,500. That sounds more than unresolved." Marissa was allowed to present because the board wanted to show transparency, which is something boards usually remember only after the damage is public. She put the deed on the screen, then the lakebed ownership record, the county parcel map, the survey overlay, and the title search showing no HOA ownership, no easement, no lease, no license, no public dedication, and absolutely no marina rights. Then she showed the permit results. No dock construction permit, no marina permit, no shoreline grading permit, no electrical permit, no fuel storage approval, no stormwater review, and no commercial recreation permit. Then she showed the HOA newsletter, the sales page, the QR payment portal, the membership form, the $7,500 slip receipt, the $1,200 kayak rack fee, the $500 key fob charge, the $4 million project budget line, and finally, the red tags. By the time the last slide appeared, the room was silent. A man in the second row stood up, holding his membership packet. "So we bought boat slips on a private lake we legally can't use?" The HOA attorney said. "The association is reviewing all rights and remedies." The man bluntly replied, "That means yes." Another resident asked if the board had obtained a title opinion before approving construction. The treasurer looked at Karen, and Karen said the board relied on historical representations. Marissa asked, "Historical representations from whom?" But Karen did not answer. Another resident asked whether the contractor had pulled permits, and the HOA attorney said permitting responsibilities were under review. Someone else asked if insurance would cover it, and the attorney stated coverage would depend on findings regarding knowledge, authority, and intentional conduct. That made the room worse, because knowledge, authority, and intentional conduct are legal words that sound expensive even to people who are not lawyers. Then a woman near the front said what everyone was thinking. "You sold us slips before you knew we had rights." Karen said, "We believed residents deserved access." The woman snapped back, "Deserving is not owning." People clapped not because it was clever, but because it was true. By the end of the meeting, the board voted to suspend marina operations, freeze all related funds, begin refunds, preserve records, hire outside counsel, cooperate with county agencies, and remove Karen from project authority pending investigation. Karen tried to object, but a resident shouted, "You already spent $4 million objecting to reality." That was the moment her presidency effectively ended. The marina did not disappear overnight. That is not how real consequences work. For weeks, it sat there behind caution tape, floating quietly on water it never had permission to touch. The red tags faded slightly in the sun, the grand opening banner came down, the check-in table vanished, and the QR sign was removed. The fuel cabinet was hauled away first because the fire marshal did not want it near the water another day longer than necessary. Refunds took time. Residents who had paid for slips got their money back. Though some had to fight for fees, the HOA tried to label administrative. Kayak rack payments were refunded, key fob charges were refunded, and reservation deposits were refunded. A few residents sued anyway, claiming the board had misrepresented the marina's legal status. The contractor blamed the HOA. The HOA blamed the contractor. The management company blamed unclear historical expectations, and the county blamed missing permits, which was the only blame that came with stamps and enforcement power. Lake Hollow had to pay fines, inspection fees, attorney fees, survey costs, environmental review costs, and shoreline restoration expenses. They also had to pay me for unauthorized use, damage to vegetation, removal of my signs, access road disturbance, and legal costs. The docks were eventually removed under county supervision. Not all at once, but section by section. Slip 40 came out first, then slip 39, then the floating office, then the electrical pedestals, and finally the kayak racks. By the time they removed the last section, the lake looked wounded but recognizable. I walked the shoreline with the environmental officer and a restoration contractor. We replanted grass, stabilized the bank, repaired the ramp scar, replaced the old private signs, added cameras, and put the access road gate back under my lock, not theirs. Then I put up a new sign facing Lake Hollow, private, Lake No, HOA, Marina County, verified. Below it, I added another, boat slips, do not create ownership. People asked if that was necessary, and I said yes. Karen resigned 2 days before the recall meeting. Her statement said she had pursued a bold amenity vision for the benefit of Lake Hollow residents, and that she regretted that legal technicalities prevented the community from enjoying the lake as intended. Legal technicalities, that was what she called my deed. That was what she called county permits, lakebed ownership, shoreline laws, electrical inspections, environmental rules, and the basic fact that you cannot sell access to property you do not own. Residents did not accept it. They wanted to know why the board approved a $4 million project without a recorded easement, why slip memberships were sold before permits, why Karen ignored warning letters, and why dues had been used to build a marina that was legally dead the moment the first piling touched the water. The new board hired outside counsel to investigate, and the final report was not kind. It found that the board had relied on assumptions, marketing language, resident expectations, and Karen's repeated claims that the lake issue would resolve once construction created reliance. That phrase made my attorney laugh for the first time in the entire case. Construction created reliance in plain English. That meant they thought spending money would pressure me into giving up rights. They were wrong. The lake is quiet again now. Not exactly the same once someone invades a place. You never look at it with the same innocence. I still notice tire marks faster. I still check cameras more often. And I still keep the deed scanned in 3 places. But the herons came back. The turtles returned to the log. My mother's old chair sits on the repaired dock. And the water has its silence again. Sometimes I stand on the bank where their marina gate used to be and imagine what would have happened if I had waited. 40 boats, fuel, noise, wake damage, trash, insurance claims, and residents believing memberships made them owners. And eventually, when something went wrong, people would have asked why I allowed a commercial marina on my private lake. That is why you stop it early. That is why you record. That is why you do not let a logo, a crowd, a contractor, or a $4 million price tag make you doubt the records. An HOA can call a lake a community amenity. It can print brochures, sell slips, number docks, install keypads, and host a grand opening. But a view is not ownership. A membership is not an easement. A project budget is not a permit. A marina built on the wrong lake is not an investment, it is evidence. If an HOA ever advertises your pond, lake, dock, road, trail, field, shoreline, or access point as something residents can buy into, do not wait for the grand opening. Screenshot the listing, save the payment page, record the signs, and pull your deed. Survey, parcel map, title search, permits, and old warning letters. Call the sheriff when people enter. Call the county when construction starts. And call the inspectors when electricity, fuel, grading, docks, or public access appear. Do not tear it down yourself, let the records do that. Lake Hollow sold boat slips on my private lake, and county records shut down their $4 million marina. And if this story kept you listening, tell me in the comments what you think was worse. Karen, building the marina without ownership, or selling residents slips before permits ever existed. Share this with someone who owns land near an HOA, a lake, a pond, or a private dock. And subscribe for more stories where ordinary property owners do not win by yelling louder, but by keeping the records that prove exactly where the HOA's fantasy ends.